Good morning and welcome to Dateline New Haven on WNHH-FM, New Haven's home for community radio. This is Paul Bass inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make our community tick in our world. And today we have a special treat. Because now your headphones are high.
Too loud.
Huh. Okay. I got them down pretty low. So if you're like me, a lot of us are feeling like the world's gone crazy. A lot of us are confused. Every day we're inundated with headlines about storms and atrocities and constitutional crises. And what does it all mean? Well, today we're going to figure out. We have someone here who could explain to us all the mysteries of the world and why the world has gone crazy. His name is Sam Gejdenson, smartest guy I know pretty much. And he knows more about this stuff because of who he is and what he has done. Sam is a former U.S. congressman from Connecticut, and he served for 20 years, 1981 to 2001. I always remember he had the #1 anti-Ronald Reagan voting record in the Congress, and he's continued to be involved and knowledgeable about what's going on. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to stand in, I hope, for all our readers, and just fire questions of Sam Gejdenson about all the craziness in the world, and Sam is going to explain it to us. Sam, you ready?
Best I can be.
Well, thanks for coming in.
Happy to be here.
All right. So, Sam, I'm just going to ask you questions. They're going to be random. They're going to be coming from everywhere. Ready?
Go ahead.
Did 30% of the United States just have a secret mass lobotomy?
No, I think they were always there, but when they get confirmation for their racist, misogynist, homophobic behavior from the top, suddenly they feel freer to talk about it.
So that happened during Trump.
During Trump. So
but it still was starting before, and it's been happening since.
Right. So it's growing. There were always people in the Congress that were willing to shout approval for anti-foreigners and to, religious bigotry and all the other things. But the President of the United States has a lot of status in the world, and suddenly the President of the United States gave approval to the most base, racist, hateful views.
But he got elected.
Right.
Would he have gotten elected before?
I think it's a period of time where there's a lot of flux in the world, so a lot of things happen. But misogyny is one of the hardest things to get rid of. Remember, black men, at least in theory, got the vote before white women. So, we think that blacks are on the bottom. They are on the bottom in most cases, in most everything. But when it came to giving people the right to vote, it made more sense to give black men the vote than to give white women the vote. So that's still a big problem.
And it's happening all over the world, not just here. And xenophobia, misogyny, racism. I mean, it's on the rise in Hungary. It's on the rise.
Yeah, it's on the rise everywhere. So what happens is the world doesn't like change. And when change occurs rapidly, it makes people uncomfortable about where they are. And you can look at history and see it. There are long periods where things are pretty quiet. You're a serf? You don't mind being a serf. The Lord owns all the land. You get 2 potatoes a week. Everything's good. All of a sudden, people start saying, I don't like being a serf. And revolutions start happening. And so, this happens at times of change. International trade, international travel. America's not as white as it used to be. So all those things make a lot of people very nervous.
So then it's an opportunity for people to play on their fears to succeed. Right. We saw Father Coughlin in the 1930s. But is there something different now? I asked you about that 30% number for a reason. Okay, since the Confederacy, it's not like that ever died out, that people who were the sons of the Civil War, the Confederacy, or, white nationalist racist groups, Timothy McVeigh. But it seems like in polls, there are larger numbers now who support racist ideas. I could be wrong. No, you had a rebellion by the Confederacy along with some Orthodox Jews, believe it or not, next to the Nazis, January 6th in the Capitol. You have polls where millions of people believe the QAnon conspiracies.
Well, they believe a lot of things. I mean, there are people, small groups that get together, think the world's coming to an end and take pills.
But before they read the National Enquirer or they went to some John Birch Society.
Now it's all on the internet.
But there's so many of them, they swing elections. I mean, the governors of Florida and Texas feel they have to make policy that kills people just so they don't lose the primary.
Kills children. Usually a bad political thing, killing children.
So Mary McGowan wants us to check out a podcast by Bannon on Gab that I think she says fits into it. You know, Steve Bannon is kind of popular now. On
Terrible
Gab.
person.
Yes. Okay, so you think that it's not different from other periods in history?
No, just there's a lot of change. So you look at like what happened in Europe. What happened in Europe is for a long time they said to the Turks, Turks says we want to become Europeans. They said, great, jump so high. And the Turks would jump so high. And the reason they didn't want the Turks in Europe wasn't so much the Turks, but they thought, we can't tell a Turk from a Syrian, from an Iraqi. If we let the Turks in the European Union, the whole Muslim world's going to come and live in Europe, and we won't be white Christians anymore, where identity of religion and ethnicity, much bigger than the United States, although big here too. So sure enough, Turkey finds that, screw you, we're not coming. But even without Turkey in the Union, all of a sudden massive amounts of immigration occurred, and that was kind of a trigger to let people go back to their old races. It used to be gypsies, Jews, and a few others. Now you've got, more Muslims and others that they worry about, Africans. But it's the same kind of situation. By the way, economically, none of these countries are going to make it if they don't let in immigration.
Right, and we're going to obviously be
at least not with the economic model we've lived on, which is growth. You need population growth, and white Christians and others are not having children. So in order to get workers, in order to get consumers, they're going to have to.
Well, we know New Haven benefited from allowing it in a lot of immigration because people wanted to work.
But here's the so you don't have to be an immigrant for long to want to pull up the ladder. Last one in wants to be the last one in. I was at a town meeting with Senator Dodd. I think he was a congressman at the time, and I was the state rep. And a guy got up at the front of the room with a brogue you could cut with a knife. And he said, Congressman Dodd, what you going to be doing about all the illegal aliens taking jobs away from good Americans? Not a very good Irish accent, but this guy couldn't have been in the country more than a year. He was just off the boat. He didn't want the next guy to come in.
And then your parents you were born in a displaced person camp.
Yeah.
So you are you an immigrant? Or
I am an immigrant. No, I'm an immigrant. It gave me trouble, actually. I was on this, Speaker Pelosi appointed me to this board, and I had to get national security clearance, which was insane. And after about a year of spending the government's money, they finally came to me and they said, we have a problem. It's because we found in some places you're Sam. In some places,
Shmuel.
you're Samuel. And that's what I said. By the way, I said in my green card says I'm Shmuel.
So Harry writes in, Sam, that you're wrong.
Pardon?
So Harry writes in that you're wrong.
Uh-huh.
Maybe you are. Let's see. He said, worse than QAnon is that the Democrats ran with Russian propaganda about the dossier for 4 years, the Steele dossier. Is he right that Democrats had a crazier conspiracy theory than QAnon, who says there's an international cartel run by George Soros and Clinton, all these people who were secretly raping children in pizzerias? And
tell him I'm going to use my Jewish laser to take him out because because the obvious evidence of Trump's giving in to the Russians on almost everything. On the other hand, he gave in to almost every dictator.
And actually, I agree with Harry that there was not a Russian conspiracy. Foreign countries always want with somebody one or other, and I think he's right about the Steele dossier. I don't think that compares to a theory that there's an international ring of child predators who are raping children at the highest levels
in a basement that didn't exist.
Yeah, and then they shoot people at the pizzeria.
Right.
Okay.
So, and the evidence on Trump doing what the Russians wanted to do was pretty clear, right from the very beginning, from the get-go. And his public statements, please, Russia, find what you can about Hillary. So that's not even worth.
Well, I have a related question, because we're talking to Sam Gejdenson, the guy who knows more than anything about what's happening in the world in Connecticut, here on Dateline New Haven, WNHH FM 103.5, live streamed at newhaven.org. We're just today having Sam Gejdenson explain all the craziness in the world. So, Sam Gejdenson, how did Fox News become the most popular source of news information?
Reagan changed the rules and let this guy in. It used to be, if you owned a major American news system, you needed to have one, be an American, and two, there was the equal time provision. He got rid of equal time and he let this guy in.
But Reagan was not wrong about foreign ownership, was he? Do you think, Sam, that you could only own a news organization if you're born? That would not...
I don't know, but it's very coincidental that a guy from Australia was the one who really benefited from all this.
I know.
And
now while his people are all vaccinated, not allowed in the Fox News building unless they're vaccinated. They're making all this money by scaring millions of people.
Can I come back to one complaint about Reagan?
Yeah.
I live on a farm, and I work on the farm. And because of Reagan, everywhere I go when I have a problem, I have to bring 2 sets of wrenches. Among the good things that Jimmy Carter did was he was getting rid of our measuring system and putting in metric. And one of the first things Reagan did was tear the solar panels off the White House roof, for what reason I don't know, and 2, get rid of the metric thing. So we already had highway signs in metric. So now when I go fix something, I don't know if the screws and nuts are metric screws or SAE, the standard American, measurement. So you have to have 2 wrenches for every project.
And Maria says, China owns Democrats' Hunter's laptop.
That's lovely. Again, my laser is going to get rid of the laptop and Hunter. Okay. Hunter's not a good kid.
But the truth is, Rupert Murdoch made money with Fox through Roger Ailes because they did something people wanted. I mean, people want to watch Fox.
Well, the Nazis did something people wanted. I mean, if that's your standard for things.
But that kind of is, isn't it? What book did Donald Trump have next to his bed, according to his wife?
No, I don't know.
Mein Kampf.
Really? Yeah. Well, look at the Capitol riot and look at the beer hall push of Hitler's.
And it almost succeeded. No, they came within minutes of killing Michael Pence. What would have happened?
In November 8th, 1923, Hitler and the Nazis try to take over regional government, and they almost succeed. He ends up going to jail, comes back with a more sophisticated plan to take over the country, and we know the price everybody paid for that. So, this isn't an accident. This guy was an authoritarian. He liked authoritarians. And he did real damage to our democracy, which I hope we're strong enough to come back from. But
now, you were in Congress. What were you feeling on January 6th when people who were sitting where you used to sit were carrying on the ground and hoping they weren't shot to death while people were trying to break in to kill them?
Well, several things. One, I'm on the board of NDI. We do election monitoring and training around the world trying to help countries become more democratic. Our credibility significantly damaged by what happened that day. So that was part of what was going on in my head.
Was it visceral at all?
It wasn't fear. It was just sadness that this jewel of a democracy was being attacked by thugs. Some people, I'm sure, have some mental illness issues, but basically it was thugs. And it's still going on now with the vaccine issues. I joked with you on the way in. I said, well, I'm not stopping for red lights anymore. Or stop signs or following the speed limit because it infringes on my constitutional rights of freedom.
So your point is that libertarianism doesn't mean you can do whatever you want to hurt someone else and kill somebody else. You still have to stop for the red light.
It's dangerous.
So how did this happen, Sam Gejdenson? Sam Gejdenson has explained all the craziness in the world. You didn't live at a time when we all took the polio shot. We wiped out polio.
Yes, no, I got polio shots. The kids that were a couple years older than me, one of the guys we played basketball with, nobody knows about my great basketball career.
You were guard, right?
I was nothing. I think I was a bench warmer, but he had braces on his legs. He had polio.
Tony Harp almost died from polio. My question is, when you're explaining the craziness in the world, how did we go from a society where just about everybody would unite to tackle a medical threat that was a public health crisis that was going to kill us, to take a vaccine and wipe it out? How did we evolve from that to a country that is even fighting each other and hurting each other and threatening each other by doing simple public health measures to try to keep us all alive?
Confirmation from the top. The top, Trump people confirmed all this, that it was okay to reject science.
But Trump developed the vaccine.
Global warming.
That's the thing he did right.
Scientists did the vaccine. The Obama administration, by the way, had designed a machine to make 150,000 masks a day or an hour.
But what I mean is, you and I disagree with Trump so much, but we have to give him the credit that he sped up
his
vaccine.
Did one thing, right?
But people won't take it. So what's that about? Why are we a different country that we're fighting? Why are his people yelling at people and fighting and trying to shut down, forcing governors, basically, if they want to stay in office, to have people not be allowed to get the vaccine or find out about it in Tennessee?
Forget about governors. Governors got security guards. People in city councils and school boards who don't have security guards. So why is that happening?
Explain that craziness.
I think it's the same thing. They got confirmation from the top and the Republican Party to reject science. Look at Louisiana.
But why?
I'm not saying the only reason this hurricane happened is because of global warming, but every month our temperatures are higher than they were before. It's always the hottest month, the hottest year, and then it snows one day a year, and the Republicans say, well, look at that, there's snow, this is a snowball, therefore there's no global warming. I don't know that the science on global warming is perfect, but taking a look at it, it looks like it's a pretty reasonable conclusion. The Republicans are now quiet about global warming after the summer, the West on fire, the hurricanes coming. But for years, they denigrated scientists. And now, my brother's very mad about this, by the way. They're giving people horse and goat wormer. My brother has goats. So the price of his goat wormer and its availability has gone, the price has gone up, the availability has gone down. So things that people have researched that scientists say are good for you, that they're not taking. But if you give them something made for a horse, which has some different, attributes than a human being, that they're willing to take in large number. And I just saw, significant numbers of people are ending up in the hospital ill from having taken these drugs.
That's what I want to ask you next, Sam Gejdenson. You're here to explain on WNHH-FM all the craziness in the world. Why are millions of people wanting to take deworming medicine for COVID-19?
Well, I think it's Darwinism at work.
Explain, please.
Well, Darwinism, the best is supposed to reproduce, and the other guys are supposed to go away. And they keep doing it, there's going to be less of them. I mean, it's insane.
Have you ever seen Idiocracy?
Yeah.
Best movie?
No, I didn't see the movie. I look at it on the street today.
It's an amazing movie. It was by the Beavis and Butthead people about what's going to happen politically when Fox News culture takes over the world in 20 or 30 years.
Yeah.
Their argument's the opposite of yours. Their argument was the people who are least intelligent have the most kids.
Oh, yeah. I think that's a problem. I think that is a problem.
Okay, see that? So here's a question for Sam Gejdenson explaining all the craziness in the world. Because I'm just like our listeners. We're seeing all this craziness and wonder what's going on in the world. Why are state legislatures, elected state legislatures, hiring nutbag conspiracy theorists to do official recounts of the 2020 presidential results that have been certified over and over again by Republicans, the party that lost?
That's our fault.
How so?
Our people don't vote in local elections.
Jews?
No, just liberal thinking people. They don't care about local government. They're big picture, the United States, international foreign policy. We can't get people out on local elections.
You don't think it was gerrymandering?
Well, how does the gerrymandering occur?
Because
our people don't vote. Our people don't vote in local elections.
You really think liberals vote less than conservatives? Because, the QAnon vote is not an outside presidential year vote. I mean, Trump gets a lot of people on both sides voting who don't vote in those elections, the liberals and the
progressives generally don't vote in local elections.
Really?
Well, and in my own experience, when I was running for state rep, a good friend of mine said, well, I'm not going to vote. I don't care about who gets elected. I just care about the environment.
Okay. That's that answer. Sam Gejdenson, former U.S. Congressman, 20 years, number one. And by the way, were you the longest serving before Rosa?
No, I don't think so. Maybe I could have been. I didn't keep track of that. But let me just say, Rosa, the best, most important congressperson that Connecticut's ever had. One, she's got more energy and brains than most, and she's now at a point in the political process where she can benefit and has benefited Connecticut more than all the rest of us put together.
You know what I admire a number of things about Rosa DeLauro. One thing I admire, it's a very old-fashioned idea. It's the opposite of, let's say, Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene, who come in and say, we don't even want to be on a committee, we don't want to legislate, we don't want to be on Fox News. Right. She's a worker.
Oh, yeah.
She's been focused from day one about how do you get legislation passed. I guess because she was chief of staff for Chris Dobby before.
Right.
So she has been in the trenches for 30 years about how do you develop relationships, how do you get legislation past each step. So when she was trying to get a child tax credit, including the stimulus, she knew the first morning when it was in the bill which call she had to make. And then at each step when it was
and she knew what it needed to really do.
Yeah, she's a worker. So
she started, locally here in New Haven.
With the 1975 election for mayor with the Frank Logue unseating the machine.
Right, and so this is a person that knows the impact on the ground, too. I mean, it's one thing to be, congressman, you're a little bit elevated looking down at how things work. She knows what happens in city halls. She knows what happens in town halls. And
I just admire working that long on the unglamorous day-to-day work of passing legislation. And for her, I mean, she went 18 years for the child tax credit.
Unbelievable.
I wish we had more of that in this country, including the conservatives, because I think there are very good conservatives who feel the same way. I mean, as much as you might, and I might not like Mitch McConnell, he believes in legislation and having a long game and strategy and trying to get things passed and not necessarily getting a headline for it. I wish we had more people who cared now about the process, who cared about legislating, doing the work of making
One of the
good.
problems, again, the people have been convinced that the less you know about government, the better it's going to be for you. And you want somebody that knows absolutely nothing, and that will be the best result.
Yeah.
So next time you need a brain surgeon, get a plumber.
Okay. We're talking to Sam Gejdenson about why all this craziness is happening in the world. And thankfully, Sam's here today on WNHH-FM. And he's going to explain it to us so we can finally figure out why our heads have been exploding.
You might get arrested for false advertising with that statement.
No, I also got some invective for you. Okay. Sam Gejdenson, why did we spend $2 trillion on a war in Afghanistan?
Well, the first lesson of politics is it's better politically to be consistently wrong than change positions. So even if there are new facts, and I call that the Romney rule, not the Romney that's in the Senate now, but his father.
George Romney from
George
Michigan.
Romney comes back from Vietnam, loves the war, runs for president, things has changed, and in changing his position on the war, he makes the mistake of using these words, "I was brainwashed." That was it. The campaign died within seconds. It was like pricking a balloon. It was all over. And so I think the lessons people learned, you can do the wrong thing as long as you're consistent. Because the hardest thing to explain to your voters is that the situation has changed. I have new information. And maybe I did what I thought was right then, but now I think it's wrong, so I'm changing my position.
So once we get in, whether it's Vietnam, this is bipartisan, of course.
Right.
And, I mean, at least
Vietnam,
as much Democrats.
voting for defense products, whatever it is, as long as you're consistent.
And that was tricky for you because your district had to let you vote when you were a congressman. Right. You got criticized for not being on the committee.
Right. So that is the beginning of how we get into this. Bush, I think, blew Afghanistan from the beginning. They came in, they won. Instead of doing it, they just left. And then they had to go back. And they let Osama bin Laden leave. I mean, they did everything wrong. So then he decided, I'm going to be tougher than my daddy. My daddy went to Iraq once and didn't solve the world's problems.
Dick Cheney and
right. Well, but
Rumsfeld telling him that.
When they asked Bush,
he regrets it.
Did you ask your father? He said, I've talked to a higher father. He talked to God. God gave him instructions. Sometimes I worry about the translation when politicians talk to God. And so, he went whole hog there. That worked out really well, too. Now, the great thing about this whole presidential year is that Jerry Falwell Jr.'s girlfriend may be the reason that Trump's got to be president. Because when Jerry Falwell got caught with pictures of being with a girlfriend and his wife.
Liberty. Yeah.
Right. Liberty got it, whatever that.
He left Liberty University.
Yeah, but the newspaper that got the pictures was the one that Trump was close to. And Trump's lawyer, Cohen, cut a deal that buried the story. And that's why Jerry Falwell Jr. endorsed Trump, and all the other sheep followed him.
Okay. I got another question for you here. How could the President of the United States conclude that it would take months and months at the least before the Taliban would take over the country once we pulled our troops? How could Joe Biden have been so wrong?
The only thing I can say is our military and our people on the ground were fooled. And
so they weren't telling him? I thought there were people telling him,
well,
look, there's no army there. It's going to take 2 seconds.
The army held up while we had virtually nobody in the country. When Trump cut the deal with the Taliban, showing the picture of him hugging, and remember, Trump didn't just want to cut a deal with the Taliban. He wanted to invite the Taliban to Camp David for a little get-together. People said that's a little unseemly. And so he didn't.
I know we can criticize Trump about this, but the truth
always
is,
happy to do that. I'll get to
but
Biden.
Biden screwed up.
Okay, so I don't know that he screwed up. I don't know that he had choices. Trump cut a deal to get us out of there 2 or 3 months earlier. Biden stretched it as long as he could.
But he also acted on the assumption, Sam.
Right, that they'd hold
that
up
there'd
longer.
be 18 months
It's
that
hard
before
to
Talent
believe.
took over. It
It's
was
hard,
18 minutes.
It's hard to believe after 20 years they couldn't stand around for the weekend before they collapsed. And on extracting people, a month ago, I think it was, we were trying to figure out if American Samoa would accept a couple hundred people. So nobody wants people. Nobody wants Afghanis.
Right, it's always easy to answer Francis. Wrong. The military gave good guidance to the Biden administration, and they chose to ignore them.
I don't think
Biden
so.
has blood on his hands.
I don't think so.
But, Sam, now I know so much less than you do about foreign policy, about the world.
No,
but
I don't know.
I know
much
so
more.
much less than you. Don't come on, you let's lay the stuff you do. But I was convinced before this all happened that the Taliban would be in charge immediately.
Yeah,
And all I did was read the New York Times, and that's how I had that, and the Wall Street Journal.
So here's
and that's how
the
I had
question:
that impression.
if you stay longer, you then have to put more troops into Afghanistan.
I didn't say stay longer. Why didn't we evacuate earlier? Because we were worried that would look like the Afghanistan government was weak, and therefore we thought that would hurt them staying in power if we spent a month before the deadline.
We're trying to get a lot of things done. We're trying to get people that helped us out. We're trying to find anybody who'll take them, which nobody would till the whole thing fell apart. I think in the long term of history, Biden will look good for getting us out of there.
I think long term history, no one's going to be talking about it.
Yeah,
I could be wrong.
No.
I think that the one cynical thing Biden was right about, and I think he was right for leaving, no question. I think it's a bipartisan consensus. I think Trump was right. People really don't care.
They're not generally a
And
large portion of the population.
Every 2 hours in America, more people die of COVID than Americans who died in the last 5 years of Afghanistan.
Yeah. No, without a doubt.
Okay, Sam Gejdenson, explain the world for us. Sam, you were in Congress
Yes.
when 241 American Marines were killed in Beirut.
Right.
Ronald Reagan was the Republican conservative president.
He immediately invaded Grenada.
Why was the reaction so different then
Well, because
from when 13 Marines were killed in Afghanistan? When 241 Marines were
Exactly.
killed,
Exactly.
there was not a retaliation. There was not Democrats calling for Reagan's head. Nobody, everyone united behind the president. Why is it different now? Why is the world gone crazy?
Well, I think the other side's much more inclined towards slashing a Democratic president. I mean, look what they did to Obama for 8 years, who thought he could be nice and civil with them, and he got nothing. They just cut him every day.
Well, that's because they knew they could play on hatred of a black person.
Yes, that's true. But, so I think it was a time where, the one thing the Reagan people were very good at, and I didn't get this till I went to a play late in life. I never could understand how, in television or a movie, they focus in on one person. And you don't see the others when you're supposed to listen to that one guy. Well, in a play, everybody else stops moving. And the guy that gets the spotlight is the one you're looking at. So within days of the Marines being killed, Reagan invaded a small island that was building a runway.
And look at all the doctors we have now.
Right, exactly. So we went in and we invaded this country and we won. And John Wayne made a movie about it, and we felt good. Yeah.
John Wayne made a movie about Grenada?
I think, was it John Wayne? Or, wait, we may have been a different...
Clint Eastwood or something?
Clint Eastwood.
Did anyone watch that movie?
I don't know, but we all felt good about winning and beating.
I didn't feel good about Grenada.
No, me either.
There were 7 people in New Haven Green who were protesting that when I was there that day.
Yeah.
So, Sam Gejdenson.
Yes.
You and I are Jewish.
Really?
Yes. I just wanted to let you know that.
Oh, thank you.
Why did Orthodox Jews
Yeah.
stand next to Nazis and other white supremacists in storming the U.S. Capitol on January 6th?
I think every ethnic group has some defective people. So there weren't many of our people there because we're a small number.
But there was a bus commissioned from Long Island of Orthodox Jews.
And because we're a small group of people, we only had a small group there. They're crazy.
But, I mean, they were with Nazis trying to have the Confederacy
So what other explanation is
War.
there? They're insane.
I would say it's fundamentalism.
Well,
that is.
Some people like me who are a little less religious than you would say
but
that
I'm a conservative
religion...
Jew. So I'm a conservative Jew.
I understand
And
that.
I would say the majority of observant Jews like me, and we know from polls that Jews overwhelmingly voted against Trump, that after black Americans, Jews were the number one group to vote consistently against Trump and Republicans. But
we have
Orthodox Jews voted overwhelmingly for Trump, and they love him even more now.
Well, Bill Maher...
Why?
I think Bill Maher think it was Bill Maher, said basically, if you can believe all the magic in some of the religions, then you can believe anything. And I think the hocus pocus that a lot of these people believe in, new hocus pocus sells easily. And, there may be Jewish QAnon followers for all I know.
Oh, boy. Well, on that note, I'm going to remind you that you're listening to Dateline New Haven and WNHH-FM. I'm Paul Bass, exploring all the craziness in the world. Former U.S. Rep.
We don't have them.
Sam Gejdenson is going to explain. We have an hour. Going to explain all the craziness in the world.
There's more craziness than an hour.
Okay. So, Sam, why is so much of the world democratically supporting non-democracy? Why do people who are against free elections and democratic institutions getting elected, from Hungary to India to Turkey to the United States with Trump?
Well,
Why? There's a guy now, Josh Hawley, who is openly advocating a theocracy in America. The right-wing Tucker Carlson, the most influential and beloved and followed conservative Republican spokesperson, even our station manager parrots him. He went to Hungary and said that Viktor Orban, who's been dismantling democracy, is a model. Here's what Tucker Carlson said about the Taliban. Okay, the Taliban, I know the conservatives will never admit that Tucker Carlson is saying this and getting the ratings. He said the Taliban don't hate their own masculinity. Saying about a group that make girls not have schools, kill them if they go to schools, and make them all have hide. He said they don't think it's toxic. They like the patriarchy. Some of their women like it too, so now they're getting it all back. Tucker Carlson, I think he might run for president. Influential. Why are people in democracies turning their back on democracy?
Well, I think, Tucker Carlson in the 30s would have been a Nazi. In the 20s in Russia would have been a communist. I think he's not a thoughtful person. It's irrelevant what he says.
But he's so influential. Millions and millions of people are watching him with Viktor Orban in Hungary.
Right. And it's a sad commentary on what's happened from this country and globally. A couple of things go on. One, most countries look internally. But the European Union is starting to get annoyed at both Poland and Hungary for.
But it is an international trend. Steve Bannon knew what he was doing when he went to Marine Le Pen in France. And
listen, when the Berlin Wall fell, there was a moment of euphoria. That everything seemed to be getting better, and I was in Belarus for an election, which was completely corrupt, my father's homeland. And another gentleman, I wish I'd come up with this line. He said, here in Belarus, the first election was the most democratic when the wall fell and when the Soviet Empire.
And it wasn't just Belarus. It was all the former Soviet socialist.
Right. And every election after that is less and less democratic.
Well, that's true in most places.
These guys are
Estonia did pretty well, right? But for most of the former socialist republics, including you have roots in Belarus.
Yeah. No, going the wrong way. And Russia's just a dictatorship.
But maybe people don't want liberal democracy.
No, it's regular people aren't. They're not made of the stuff it takes to fight dictators.
Because it's hard work to have democratic institutions.
Hard work, you get killed.
And also, even in New Haven, you get bored. If you go to a 5-hour meeting with a civilian review board, you want to pull your hair out.
Right.
Democracy is hard work. You could give up all your free time with your kids to get people.
Knocking on doors. Yeah. It takes a certain amount of insanity. And
so maybe it's not a viable system if it requires citizens to spend some.
Jefferson, not perfect, because we now know a lot of things about him that makes him less perfect than he was in lots of ways, including being petty with Washington and other people, and not to mention having sex with a slave. Jefferson said, "Price of liberty, eternal vigilance." Was it Jefferson? I think it was him.
Mm-hmm.
It's eternal vigilance. You can't sit back and say, "Well, we won it and it's ours."
But Sam, I'm trying to analyze. You brought up the former Soviet social republics. You talk about the way people in this country. The bad guys have more drive to steal the process. Right, just like after the Nicaraguan Revolution, right? It was a very mixed group. And after the Iranian Revolution, it was a coalition, but it was the hardcore people wanted the power. Daniel Ortega's, the Ayatollah Khomeinis who took the...
I knew the Sandinistas were no good when they nationalized Lobo Jacks, the discotheque in downtown Managua. There's no economic model of socialism.
But I'm trying to get at why people choose it. So
they don't choose it. The other guys steal it from
So I
them.
think what you're saying is that when the Berlin Wall fell, that was democratic. When we form a country, it's democratic. But that it takes the eternal vigilance to keep democracy in place. Otherwise, people who are just hungry for power. And that's why I would say I don't think the Sandinistas were all rotten. I think Borge, who ran the prisons, was. I think Ortega, who wanted the power, was. I think the Iranian Revolution, like Roya supported, the people who were like Roya, she was too young, were in the coalition, idealistic liberal people, but then who really wanted the power squeezed the other people out. So I think there's something about human nature there, Sam.
No, I think it's,
people are complicated. They want all sorts of things.
But I think the mass of people aren't willing to take the bullets to save their country from the dictator.
And then when they do, boy, in Belarus they took bullets, huh?
In all these, in Tajikistan, they shot each other for a long time.
Hong Kong.
So here's what, in Tajikistan, the fundamentalists and the old communists have a long, bloody fight. The old communists take over, and very rapidly, the same guy's been president happily for the last 20 years or so.
So let me ask you about liberal democracy. Was it just an historical blip because of difficulty in maintaining it day to day?
No.
And by liberal, I don't mean left.
Yeah, I understand.
It could be conservatives, too.
Yeah, I doubt it.
Rule of law.
Yeah, right. No, I think we got a kick in the pants on January 6th, the wake-up call. And, the Supreme Court, we got some bad people on it. They got rid of the Voting Rights Act. It's not necessary anymore. The good guy on the court, Roberts, by all the stretches.
Except on that issue. He's historically, since the Bush administration, the first Bush administration, right? Or was it under Reagan, where he wrote the memos in the Justice Department to try to get rid of the Voting Rights Act.
They get rid of the Voting Rights Act. And within hours, they're closing polling places in black districts and shutting down things. So we got to come back and we got to fight. And we got to get Manchin and a few others in the Senate to establish national voting rights. It's one country.
He's not going to do it. He'll do the John Lewis Act, but it's still not going to pass the Senate. Unless do you think they should get rid of the filibuster?
Yes, now I do think so. I always was against change, like everybody else.
Because you got to be slow, and it has unintended consequences.
Right.
We Democrats started the tit for tat on judge confirmations.
Well, but it started, with right-wing racist senators. Filibuster isn't in the founding fathers. As a matter of fact, the writers at the beginning were very against small minorities controlling the Congress.
Right, but that's originalism, which the right is for, except when they're not, when they don't like the
No.
results.
But I'm saying it's not like it's part of the founding of the country. It was created by segregationists and others to control the process, to slow down anything that helped black people or poor people.
Right.
And so we got to get rid of it, and we got to get our people to vote. Our people don't vote. You know what? They want me to wait in line 10 hours. I'll wait in line 12 hours. I'm going to vote, and we need to get the Senate off its butt and pass real legislation to ensure every American has the right to vote and can get to the polls without being harassed. And it's going to be a fight.
So pre-pandemic, if we're to believe the nonpartisan groups that study this stuff, Sam, until the COVID-19 pandemic, the world was attaining historically low levels of poverty and high levels of democratic governance, although that changed a little bit before the pandemic. Why? What changed? Was it just the pandemic?
No. I really think
the BRIC countries.
I think that the fear of others coming to your country, international trade, all these things, only the bad stuff shows. So they make part of our cars in Mexico, Well, if they didn't make part of our cars in Mexico, we couldn't afford to make any cars in the United States.
And all the jobs taking the parts from here to there.
Right. So
And actually, I give Trump credit for improving NAFTA. And it wasn't just Trump. He worked with other parties. He could have governed like that on other issues. It would have been interesting.
He wasn't interested in governing like that. He was interested
But they did with NAFTA. Like, he delivered on his promise to his base, but then he had a serious trade negotiator working on it.
Because he had to get it through the Congress and things.
Yeah.
But he did stupid stuff every day of the week.
Oh, I agree.
The fact that you pick one good one is
I was just saying that was a good one.
Yeah.
I'm with you on NAFTA. No, I'm not a Trump guy. Okay.
Sure.
So is there a reason, Sam Gejdenson, explaining all the craziness in the world, is there a reason nothing is being done to help 1 million Uyghurs in China? who have been sent. They're having their culture, their religion wiped out. 1 million people sent to concentration camps.
Well, China has a lot of economic clout now. So a lot of major corporations depend on products out of China to make their products out the door. Maybe a lot of it's made here, but there's that one chip or whatever you need from China. They've taken a lot of the money they get from us and passed it around the world, you know, with lots of strings. But so they've got a lot of leverage at the moment. I think that it's not going to last for them. They're going to have trouble. They're going to have domestic trouble. They've got a massive problem in the swine, the African swine flu. Almost half their pigs may die. And they've got a real protein shortage. So they've got to buy all their protein, essentially, or their people will starve to death.
Okay, but we also thought, we predicted with China that constructive engagement was going to work. And it looked like under Deng that it was. That if the world traded more with them, that with economic liberalization would come political liberalization. They became much more of an economic powerhouse, but are now clamping down harder than ever and revising how they look at free economy.
Right, and they'll get pushback from their people. This generation of Chinese kids that I met with when I was in China a few years ago, they believe the government. The government's given them a better life than their parents. They're not living in a little shack. They got modern cities. They look like the rest of the world. You know, so they say, oh, so I give up, you know, I can't go parade myself around and complain about something. That's for now. Next, you're going to see people starting to complain. They're going to get pressure. You know, that their big economic clout, their big economic engine, gives them the ability to sustain very dictatorial policies for now.
Okay, Sam Gejdenson, former U.S. Rep, knows everything about everything, is here on Dateline New Haven, WNHHFM, to explain all the craziness in the world. So along that line, why does the manager of the New York Mets keep arguing with umpires and getting thrown out of the game?
Toby Moffett explained this to me.
Okay.
Says you always got to yell at the ref.
But Rojas got kicked out of several games when they started their losing streak.
Yeah, well...
Is it really work? Is there an effective part?
His argument is if it's a close call, you're gonna get the benefit next time.
Or will they get mad at you and not give you the benefit?
I know nothing about sports.
Okay, but that's why they do what you're saying. Rojas did it, the manager of the Mets, several times in a row, and he got kicked out. I didn't see, and they were going down a slide. I didn't see that benefiting them. Well,
their players may be bad. They may not. I don't
Harry says he's trying to light a fire under his team.
I don't understand anything about baseball, but apparently they have to hit the ball and make sure nobody catches it and stays within that triangle. Okay.
So why don't pitchers pitch full games anymore? They now have all these metrics of how many pitches you throw because you want to keep their arm
again.
Longer.
I know nothing about this, but I assume at some point they lose control.
Okay. I'll ask you something else I'm hoping you know about.
Go ahead.
We have an airport in New Haven.
Yes.
Harry says it's a specialized game now. I agree with that. We have an airport in New Haven that a public authority runs.
Yeah.
They're about to sign away control of that airport for 43 years to a subsidiary of Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs saying, hey, we'll fix up the airport. We'll put $70 million in, as though we have lawyers who can compete with their lawyers if they don't do it. Give us a 43-year lease. Why would Goldman Sachs? So the reason Goldman Sachs gave for wanting to do it, they say, well, it'll take that long to recoup our profits. Has there ever been a time in human history where a Wall Street firm was willing to plunk down millions of dollars and wait 43 years for a profit?
I'm a big believer in the government building roads and airports.
Right, public, yeah.
How's the government done on the airport so far?
Is it their fault? No, that airlines don't want to fly out a tree. We had Chicago that lasted 5 minutes. I think we had DC, right? It wasted 5 minutes.
Well, there's the fight over the length of the airport and all these other things.
But now they've won all that.
Right. So does anybody else want to put the money in there? Is the government stepping up?
So is that perhaps because there's no market?
Well, if Golden is making a mistake, what do we care?
But I'm not sure they're making a mistake. I doubt they're making a mistake. I just think they're not telling us the real reason. They obviously have a reason for saying they're going to put $70 million.
You're not going to QAnon on this, are you?
I'm not doing QAnon. I'm saying when you do business with Wall Street, government lawyers can never compete in knowing what the terms of the deal are. First of all, they've already lent money. Why would they be lending money to the government? Why are they doing a loan with the airport authority?
Must be in their interest.
Right. So why is it in our interest with infrastructure to let Goldman Sachs determine
policy? Because we haven't been
policy?
able to do it, and we couldn't do it now.
So for 43 years, so this is what I think. They want to they want to resell it the second market conditions change, and they want to get such an advantageous deal that we don't understand. Do you really think they would wait 43 years to make a profit?
I don't know the answer to that, but I do know.
Of course, you know, there's quarterly earnings now are pressure.
Right.
Like we were talking about Impossible Burgers. He was saying now that they're public, they can't wait a year to have an investment payoff. It's got to pay in 3 months.
But I know the present system isn't building that. You couldn't go to the
So you're saying don't be an ideologue.
No.
Even though I agree
right.
with you. Like, for instance, Trump.
Right.
He was successful by doing partially private search for vaccine. That went against my ideology, and I think he was right because of the circumstances. What about, so with the airport, are you saying that we have to not just be ideological, and if public authority couldn't make that airport work, let Goldman Sachs come in and do some deal we'll never understand or be able to enforce because it'll work to our benefit?
And if we end up with good airline service out of New Haven, that's a plus.
But what happens if we don't?
So here's what happened with the Channel. The Channel was supposed to be a private deal.
This is from New York to New Jersey?
No, this is the tunnel from England to France. And it took a long time to get together. The French could just draw a straight line and build their train to there.
Oh, okay.
The British had to beg, borrow, and steal a path to get the train to there. They finally got... The original company went bankrupt. The governments had to take it over. If the governments couldn't start it, apparently. That's why they went to the private company. Maggie Thatcher, I think, at the time.
So you trust Goldman Sachs to do
No, I
what's
don't
in our
trust them.
interest?
I don't trust them, but I think that they've got to get us good service out of New Haven.
But they're not. They're just going to build the infrastructure. I mean, the airlines have to make money to fly here. American Airlines is leaving New Haven, Sam. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
Airlines
it's okay.
was forced by the terms of the Paycheck Protection Program. They got money. They had to go to minor markets like New Haven where they were losing money through the end of September. They're leaving the second that's up.
Right.
So if airlines can't make money...
They're not going to stay here.
Right. They never have. They never will.
Right.
So Goldman Sachs has a term in this deal. Okay, you think this QAnon. We're going to allow heavier planes than we used to.
Yeah.
Heavier planes meaning, Harry says an ulterior motive, he and I are agreeing on this. Heavier planes means freight. Now and I believe them, the head of the airport authority and the representative of Goldman Sachs, who's a good guy of this subsidiary, says we definitely don't want to do freight. I believe them. But if past history repeats itself and the airline industry changes every 5 minutes and airlines leave and they want to unload their deal to a new person, that person will not be bound by the restriction against freight. So they've now changed the rules. They have something valuable, which is a 43-year lease.
Right.
43-year lease that lets them have heavier planes.
Are we worse off with some freight coming in and out of there?
I'm not sure. There's environmental issues there. Don't we care about climate change, right?
We do care about climate change, but if it's going to fly from somewhere and it ends up creating the ability to
not have trucks on the road.
And well, you can't have trucks on the road. We don't have roads you can drive on.
Yeah, no, but in truth, we do a lot of trucking, and it's better to have...
I can't go... I go between my house in Basra and my wife's house in Brantford. I can't go on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
I know, it's terrible. So you're all gung-ho on the airport?
No, but I don't know any other alternative.
Mm-hmm. Well, not to expand it.
Yeah, I don't think that's a plus.
Why not have shuttles to Bradley?
If that... People can shuttle to Bradley now. There's 100.
No, they can't. If your flight comes in late or late, you're stuck there in the middle of nowhere. Uber now is costing like 5 times more than it ever did.
I think it'll benefit the area if we have an airport that works, and if it doesn't, that's Goldman's problem.
It's our problem because we're giving them the right to a public good on terms that they wanted rather than we wanted.
I don't know the contract that well.
They're not revealing the contract.
Uh-huh. So there you go. I don't know anything.
Sam Gejdenson, do millions of trees and underground fungal networks operate as one conscious organism?
Apparently so.
That's what we're hearing. Yeah.
So
this is new. This is all the craziness in the world. Like I'm looking at trees totally different last year, and all this stuff's coming out about how they communicate with each other, and they use these fungal networks underground.
There's a great series called Naked Science. They used to have Naked Archaeology and Naked Anthropology out of England. That's very, very good. And there's Discovery. The English have a couple of podcasts that are fantastic on these kinds of subjects, and they bring in the best people in the world. They had a discussion this week on one of their stations about COVID and the science, and they had Israelis, South Africans, Americans, and English. And, the English experiment of opening up even as cases are going up. The Israelis of giving third shots before there's really
opposite things happen in those two countries, so there had to be some reason.
So you hear what the whole world's doing. and from countries where they don't have vaccines.
So trees communicate with each other.
Yeah.
And they do it in concert with all these huge fungal networks. Dolphins and other creatures clearly now communicate with each other. They're conscious. They have consciousness. Farhad Manjar wrote about this. Okay, well, I'll let you go in a minute.
No, I'm in no rush.
What do we take from that? How does this change how we live, how we understand our world?
Well,
I want you to explain all the craziness in the
I'm
world.
happy to explain it. So,
Because you were on a farm. So you grew up with animals. You probably didn't think they had consciousness, right?
Obviously, from the minute, so we used to put the calves in the barn behind the cows, and we tie the calf up to a little loop, that was on the thing. From the second the calf was born, it wanted to be free. It would pull on that thing. We had to feed it and couldn't go outside. It was cold. So lots of reasons for what we did. But you could see the calf was conscious to the fact that it didn't like being tied up.
So what does that mean? Should we stop eating meat?
I'm not a big meat eater. I don't think that we should necessarily mandate it. There may be health benefits for some people. I think we'll be better off if we eat less meat.
So why, Sam Gejdenson, explaining all the craziness in the world. We got to go faster now because the show's almost over. Why aren't we switching to renewable microgrids, safe from hack attacks and storm wipeouts?
Well,
every storm is destroying grid. Millions of people, million or more in New Orleans, Texas, forget it. Hackers also are clearly trying to get into our nuclear power plants. Why don't we just have every bunch of houses have one generator or batteries to store from our solar panels? Like right now, we have solar panels.
Yeah.
We have to send that electricity back to UI. UI buys it from customers retail and sells them back from the grid wholesale because our government's decided we need these big grids to protect everybody. Why aren't we doing microgrids that can, so nobody can just wipe us out, either nature or hackers?
Well, just the same reason that trees communicate, I'm sure.
We need to be linked.
We need to be linked, but you got to be careful. Now, the good news is, among all the bad news, and I know you newspaper people want to be on bad news all the time, when Obama got to be president, Germany had more solar than we did. I mean, Germany, not a very sunny place, aside from the old history. Very good country now. We now have over 20% of our energy coming from renewables. Wind, solar, hydro. So we're making progress. You got problem states like Texas where they don't care about their people, and it showed during that last crisis. But even in Texas, now the guy who makes my car, Tesla, wants to start competing in the market with micro suppliers so that
the market's producing renewables.
Right.
I mean, the oil companies are going to make the most money, right, when we have to switch for climate change.
I have no idea who's going to make all the money. But
you don't?
No, I don't, because
I was hoping you would.
The utilities in states are helping people, do solar around their homes and all kinds of technology. So I called once to check on my house, and the guy said, "Wait a minute, what's your address? Your roof points in the wrong direction to put it on the roof." So so nobody had to drive out, nobody had to look. So now I know if I want to do solar, I got to put it in one of the fields next to the house. I wanted to do some solar, but we don't have high enough tension wires going past our farm. We have like less than what they need to transmit the power, but that'll change. So I think we'll end up, and they're now getting solar panels that are much more efficient. They're getting windmills that are bigger and more efficient. So we're going to make progress.
Well, that
maybe not soon enough.
That leads me to an overwhelming question as we're asking Sam Gejdenson to explain all the craziness in the world. Is it possible that the world has not gone crazy? That, in fact, it's less crazy than it's ever been? That with social media and the 24/7 news cycle that focuses on the wrong and the problems, as sometimes we should, are we just aware of so much of the day-to-day craziness of human life and society? But in fact, the world's the least crazy and the most hopeful it's ever been.
Well, it's still got a lot of crazy, so I don't think we can minimize that.
Like rape by soldiers, that always happened on a mass scale, but we only heard about it more.
Right. So here's what I tell people. Some of the right-wing fundamentalists say, the Bible wants an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, and that, it's a vengeful kind of action. And actually, what happened with that was, it started out, if you killed my son, I killed your village. And then I think the Hammurabi Code came along. No, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. You can kill his son, but you can't kill the whole village. And we said, well, that's progress. And then the Jewish Bible came along and said, well, you can mitigate. So if you cut off the guy's arm, you have to take in his harvest. Yeah. So it still said an eye for an eye.
But it came metaphorical.
But there was a way to get around it.
The Taliban are bringing it back to
right. So I think in some ways we're making progress, but it's back to Jefferson. Eternal vigilance. You got to keep fighting.
Is U.S. headed for fascism in 3 years?
No. We're going to turn it around.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great to hear. That's good. Did you ever imagine you'd see days like this, like January 6th? And how does that feel?
During the fights during the civil rights movement, when officials of state governments were beating up innocent black people and white people who were standing shoulder to shoulder with them, that looked pretty bad. And so now the beer hole push attempt at Trump, who admired Nazis and fascists, is not a surprise, and we got to struggle back.
But Sam Gejdenson is optimistic.
Yeah.
It is kind of going crazy, but we've been here
I may
before.
have a defective gene, but I've always been an optimist.
No, I think you're right. Here's the thing about optimism. It is not irrational. There's no rational argument that believing something bad is going to happen is more realistic or more supported by facts. Like, we didn't know gay marriage was going to happen so fast.
Wow.
We didn't know there'd be nuclear arms treaties.
When I voted against the Defense of Marriage Act, which would have banned gay marriage, I was the only member of the Connecticut delegation, House and Senate.
That's because the rest thought they supported gay marriage, but including Paul Wellstone felt this was a tactic.
Right, they would get in trouble.
And what did you think?
I thought the other side makes up what they want against you. So
anyway,
what you do is irrelevant. And coming from people who survived the Holocaust, where Jews couldn't do this and gypsies couldn't do this and gays and all these people, I couldn't do that. My chief of staff...
That's what Pete Buttigieg said when he ran until he repositioned himself.
Right. Well,
he said they're going to call us socialist even if we have a capitalist idea.
Right.
So let's just say what we believe.
My chief of staff came and said, you got to vote for it. I said, if you're worried about your job, you better get a job with somebody else.
All right. Sam Gejdenson. Oh, boy, I hear a public service announcement running a minute early. Sorry about that, folks. Maybe we can play it. Folks, thanks for joining us today. Sam Gejdenson, thank you for explaining all the craziness in the world to us on Dateline New Haven and WNHH-FM. I enjoyed it so much, and I appreciate you making the time to come down. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Thanks, Harry Droz, the best station manager in the universe, even as we discover new subterranean realms with fungal networks. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience, playing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free. From the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night long at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.
We've asked members of our community what they got vaccinated.